It just bugged me. This gospel lesson, something wasn't right about it. I don't know. It's like this. Wasn't complete. So I looked it up, and I realized that the good people that put together the lectionary chopped it off right at the postmodern punchline. Pilate responds after that speech by Jesus, "What is truth?" Good question. What is truth? Today is Christ the King Sunday. Is that true? Is Christ King? What makes truth truth? Well, I got to thinking about that, and I remember Don Cupid wrote a book called What is a Story? And he could shed a little light on this. He says, "So we may begin by suggesting that if indeed stories come first in making the world intelligible and memorable, then the old binary contrast between the true and the fictional must be a mistake." Let me read that last little bit over again. Then the old binary contrast between the true and the fictional must be a mistake. Fiction goes all the way down. Fiction comes first. First, the world has got to be fictioned into existence from nothing by some kind of story. Religious, cosmological, evolutionary, historical, or whatever. And only then can we find a place for talk of truth and falsity relative to the world as thus produced within the story. Oh, that's heavy duty for a Sunday morning, isn't it? That's even heavier than the New York Times op-ed page. But I think it's true. We have to start with stories. And what stories are true? If a story is not true, then we call it fiction. But according to Cupid, all stories are fiction. In Journey to Adulthood last Sunday morning, the students there reminded the adults that even when we experience an act and remember it, we turn it fictional because it changes every time we remember it. They said neurologists have proved that. I thought, wow, these kids know more than I do. So it all has to do with story. And Cupid later says truth is the story that happens to be on top at the moment. Hey, you. So truth is a story that's on top at the moment. That's a very important point to make. See, what messes me up, what messed me up for a long time, especially when dealing with this, I approached it from the good old scientific method that I was taught in school. It has to have an answer. It has to be a definitive fact. Never mind Heisenberg, who says everything's in question, the uncertainty principle. That's not truth. Within fiction dwells truth. Let's do it this way. I had a meeting with Bishop Dietschy, who will be installed on February the 2nd as our diocesan bishop. He told me a story, and he assured me this story was true. And it's a friend of his, a friend who just enjoys walking, loves walking, was in Spain, walking, got off the trail, got lost, out in the woods, comes upon this young, tall, dark Spaniard. And he looks at her and says, "It's really not good, because it's starting to get dark. It's really not good for you to be out here walking around by yourself. Where were you going?" And she told him where she was hoping to end up. And he says, "Well, I'll tell you what. I will walk with you a ways, and I know I can point you on a road, and there's a house up there, and they'll take care of you there. So they're walking along, and they come to a fork. He says, well, now I'm going this way. Your way is that way. And she says, what's your name? He said, Jesus. Oh, pretty guess. Yeah, Jesus. Is that story true? Well, probably not, because I just told it to you again. I've shared that with another person or two, and no doubt Bishop Dietschy shared it with a lot of people, and it comes from an experience that this woman had. You see what absolute truth gets you and me to? It ties us up in Gordian knots. Yes, that story is true. And if this story is true, Christ the King, then it parallels that story. What makes the story of Christ powerful? What puts it on top? The story of Christ, if I am in the midst of suffering, gives meaning and purpose to that suffering. The story of Christ pulls me out of crazy stories like Macbeth, where all I want is power, like Casanova, where all I want is to satisfy my lust, or maybe even the despair of Willie Loman in Death of a Salesman, because the story of Christ gives me hope. It empowers me with confidence. When that story's on top, I'm on top. The story of Christ is powerful, and this is the reason probably why it's the most powerful story. At any moment, it offers me the power of resurrection. I can rise from lust, from greed, from power to real, true life. Jesus shows me the way. Not to be alone on the path, but to community, where I can be in a relationship of love with others, where I can be supported by others. Christ the King is more than the name. It's a story. And is that story true? Depends if it's on top. But when that story is true for me, when it is on the top, then I feel whole. I feel complete. Complete, whole. Okay? Those of you who may be as neurotic as I am, this is for you.